Wominjeka everyone, Wominjeka meaning welcome. My name is Auntie Julianne and I'm an elder of the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people, and in recognition of doing my welcome to country, I'd like to pay my respects to my elders past, present, future and any elders that were here today, and I would also like to welcome you all here today. The Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung tribe consists of three families, the Nevins, the Terricks and the Wandins, and I'm part of the Nevin family. The three families all descend from one woman called Annie Bharat, which makes us one big family. Annie Bharat is the youngest sister of William Barrett, a pioneer for Aboriginal people in the 19th century, fighting for equality and land rights. I'm here today to welcome you all to the land of my ancestors. We call the land within our tribal boundaries our country. The Kulin Nation, Kulin meaning man, is made up of 5 groups. They are the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung, Boonwurrung, Tanarong, Watharong and Dja Dja Wurrung. And to give you an outline of the Wurundjeri country and the area we cover, Wurundjeri country extends from north to the Great Dividing Range, east to Mount Baw Baw, south to the Morley Creek and west to the Werribee River. We cover a diverse range of land from the mountains to the beach and everything in between. Many thousands of years ago, if an Aboriginal person from another tribe wanted to cross our boundary, they would have to sit at the boundary and wait for the Narragadah, which is the headman, or an elder to come past to give permission to cross. Traditional Aboriginal culture was highly territorial, and visitors risked a violent reprisal for crossing a tribal or clan boundary without this permission, and this is how a welcome to country originated in our culture. Traditionally, being welcomed onto country meant you respected Bunjil's law. Bunjil the wedge-tailed eagle is our creator, and Wah the crow is our protector. And as long as you looked after the country, you had access to our waterways and our land resources. And when you enter our country, we ask that you respect our resources, our fauna, flora and water, as they are very special to us. And when you are ready to leave, we ask that you leave it the way you found it.
We have lots of council services that support our community. We support families with children, including health services for children and mums, vaccinations, playgroups, childcare, and kinder. We support young people in our community. Through events and activities, we have services that can support people with disability, older people, and carers and family of people with disability and older people. Our libraries support everyone in our community, help people learn new things, and are free to join. We support our community to have fun and be active through events and activities, sport, and recreation areas. We help look after our places and spaces, the environment, and local businesses. We have laws to keep people safe, to make sure buildings are safe, to make sure roads and footpaths are safe, to make sure our places and spaces are safe. We make sure everyone follows the law to keep our community safe and happy. Moonee Valley. It's a great place to live, work, and visit.
Welcome everyone to the Council meeting on the 28th of January 2025, which I now declare open at 6:32 p.m. I'd like to warmly welcome members of the public who have joined us tonight, as well as those watching online. As well as being live streamed, the video recording of this meeting will also be available on our website, so attendees in the gallery are advised that your presence may be recorded. I also ask that mobile phones be switched to silent mode during the meeting. A reminder as well to the public in the gallery that, as per Governance Rule 75.1, personal video and audio recordings are not allowed. On behalf of Moonee Valley City Council, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which Moonee Valley is located, the Wurundjeri Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to their spirits, ancestors, community members and elders past, present and emerging. We also extend this respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. We now move to item 2 on the agenda, apologies and leave of absence. As all councillors are in attendance, I don't believe there's any apologies or leave of absence. We now move to item 3 on the agenda, confirmation of minutes. Councillors, can I please have a mover and a seconder that the minutes from the council meeting held on Tuesday the 10th of December 2024 and Tuesday the 17th of December 2024 be confirmed? Moved Councillor Sypek, seconded Councillor Cosgrove. Councillor Sypek, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Cosgrove? Would any other councillor like to speak? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. The next item on the agenda is declarations of conflict of interest. Does any councillor wish to flag a conflict of interest in any item on the agenda this evening? The next item on the agenda is presentations. Councillors, do we have any presentations tonight? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mayor. I've got 2 presentations.
Sure.
So I'll do the first one. I'd like to congratulate Addison Round, an East Keilor resident, for her incredible efforts in collecting 800 food items and raising over $333 through a gold coin donation at her school at Keilor Heights Primary. This generous contribution was donated to Food Bank before Christmas, and I'd just like to say what a remarkable young leader.
Thanks, Councillor Sypek.
And my second presentation is, it's a sad presentation. A former councillor, former state member and former federal member, Robert Charles Grant Sercombe, more commonly known as Bob Sercombe, passed away on the 12th of January. He was an Australian politician who represented Maribyrnong and Moonee Valley and the area of Niddrie in the state election. Bob was born in Melbourne, Victoria, and he was educated at the City University of Melbourne. He was also a public servant, a social planner and an administrator before entering politics. He was also an advisor to Clive Holding, and he was also a former Victorian opposition leader and a minister in the Hawke government from 83 until 88. Bob was a member of the Essendon City Council as well, and he represented us locally. Well, it was the Shire of Essendon back then, or the Borough of Essendon. I can't remember exactly which one. He also represented Niddrie, the member for Niddrie, in the Victorian Legislative Assembly from 88 till 96, and he was also the deputy leader of the opposition from 93 to 94 as a member of the opposition shadow ministry. In federal politics, Bob had some great achievements. He was the opposition whip from 1988 until 2001. He was elected as the opposition shadow minister from 2004 and elected as appointed as shadow minister for the Pacific Islands, assisting the shadow minister for foreign affairs, Kevin Rudd. His portfolio responsibilities were expanded sometime later by the Beazley government, by Beazley to include overseas development. And as Shadow Minister, Bob put out a series of policy announcements about expanding Australia's relationship within the Pacific region. So just want to say it's a sad passing, and I just want to wish Carmel, his wife, all the very best. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Sypek. Are there any other presentations? Councillor Isa?
Thanks, Mayor. I'd just like to comment briefly on behalf of colleagues about the events on 26th of January that it was just the Sunday just gone. On Sunday the 26th of January, the Mayor proceeded over a citizenship ceremony to welcome new Australians, and more than 90 conferees from a diverse range of backgrounds were welcomed to Moonee Valley. We then gathered at Queen's Park, where we held our 7th annual Bunjils Moron Healing Ceremony. Community members from around Moonee Valley came together to pay respect to our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples, hear from local elders and gain greater insights into what 26th of January means to them. Attendees heard an acknowledgement of history delivered by Wurundjeri Woiwurrung elder Uncle Bill Nicholson, followed by guest speaker former AFL player Nicky Winmar in conversation with Uncle Charles Pakana. We were also treated to a performance by the very talented David Arden and his band. We acknowledge that this day can cause pain to members of our community. This event was an opportunity to acknowledge the past and ongoing injustices to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Any other presentations? No, I've got a presentation myself, just on the Merrill Christmas Brunch. Following a successful Mayor Christmas event on Christmas Day 2023, Council resolved in April 2024 to deliver an annual Merrill Christmas event for the community. The 2024 Merrill Christmas event took the form of a Merrill Christmas Day brunch, where councillors, volunteers and staff welcomed approximately 100 community members and their carers who celebrated Christmas with us in council chambers. The day was an overwhelming success, with all in attendance expressing their gratitude for the meal and the ability to connect with their community on Christmas Day. The event transcended cultural and religious boundaries and brought people of all backgrounds together in a spirit of harmony and goodwill. I would like to acknowledge Helping Hands and staff for the donation of children's toys that were provided to families on the day. Thank you to all councillors, volunteers and staff that worked hard to make the day a memorable one for so many of our community. Thank you, and that concludes our presentations. The next item on the agenda is petitions and joint letters. Councillors, I believe we have one petition on the agenda. Would a councillor like to table it? Councillor Isa?
Council received a petition from the Victorian Pride Lobby signed by 14 Moonee Valley residents calling on Council to work with the Pride Reference Group to develop an LGBTQIA+ inclusion plan as part of the Rainbow Local Government campaign. The petition requests Council develop this plan to advance the inclusion of LGBTQIA+ people in Moonee Valley.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. In accordance with Governance Rule 62.4, I refer the petition to the CEO for consideration. Councillors, do we have any other petitions or joint letters? No. Councillors, we now need to amend the council meeting agenda. Can I have a mover and a seconder that council resolves to include item 7, public question time, and item 8, reports from delegates, to tonight's council meeting agenda, as they were omitted due to an administrative error? Can I have a mover? Councillor Isa. Seconder, Councillor Samantha Byrne. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Samantha Byrne. Any other councillor like to speak? No. If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. We've now come to item 7, public question time, and we have received 6 questions from 3 residents this evening. The first 2 questions are from Peter Robinson, who is not joining us this evening. Peter's first question has been disallowed in accordance with Governance Rule 61.8.2. On behalf of Peter, his second question reads, after many requests, Keilor East outdoor pool still does not have any suitable outdoor furniture. People attending this pool must sit on hard benches. Can the council please have a look at the Queen's Park pool and allocate similar outdoor furniture to the Keilor East pool? Thank you, Peter. I refer to the CEO, Helen Swade, to respond.
Thank you, Peter. Through the Mayor. Thank you, Peter, for your feedback regarding the outdoor pool furniture at the Keilor East Leisure Centre. Swimming pool furniture is site-specific and selected for durability, the needs and preferences of various user groups, and gives consideration to inclusive and accessible usage. Your feedback will be considered as part of any future procurement of furniture for the centre. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. The next two questions are from Paul Avery, who is not joining us this evening. As a combined response will be provided, Paul's two questions read, Question 1. Given the findings reported by the ABC article on the 9th of October 2024 regarding a previous councillor's corrupt conduct uncovered with a planning application, does council intend to review applications that involved that councillor? And Paul's second question reads, will council introduce rules to enable retrospective reassessment of planning applications if similar instances of this type of behaviour are confirmed in the future? Thank you, Paul. I refer to the CEO, Helen Swede, to respond.
Thank you, Paul. Through the Mayor, the ABAC investigation findings did not identify any specific planning applications as being subject to undue influence. Council decisions are made collectively based on the total number of votes for and against a specific recommendation, rather than being determined by a single councillor. If specific evidence of corrupt conduct is provided regarding a planning decision, council will undertake a review of that decision. Thank you.
Thank you, CEO. The next two questions are from Tom McCarty. Todd's two questions have been disallowed under Governance Rule 61.8.3 as they have already been answered directly. In addition, Todd's second question has been disallowed under Governance Rule 61.8.6 as it relates to confidential information as defined in Section 3 in brackets 1 of the Act. Item 8 on the agenda is reports from delegates. Councillors, do we have any reports as delegates? No? If not, we move to item 9, which is reports. So the first report on the agenda is item 9.1, Bagaroo Jering Reconciliation Plan Update. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with an additional point B, which I can't see as I'm reading, so I'll just rely on someone to check.
That's okay, I'll follow
haven't made
while
any
you're
mistakes.
reading.
Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Isa.
Point B that reads, a request for language was made to Wurundjeri Woiwurrung Cultural Heritage Aboriginal Corporation for Woiwurrung names for several identified parks and open spaces within Moonee Valley, and request the Chief Executive Officers or their delegate to submit an additional request for language for Woiwurrung names for Debney's Park, Fairbairn Park and Queen's Park within culturally appropriate timelines, noting that naming processes, if undertaken, need to comply with the naming rules for places in Victoria to build awareness of the proposal and invite feedback from the community.
Thanks, Councillor Isa. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Theocrides. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor, and it's really lovely after Sunday's beautiful healing ceremony to commence our first meeting of 2025 with a recap on the work that's been done under our reconciliation action plan, our Bagaroo Jering Shoulder Shoulder Together reconciliation plan, and receive this progress report. We endorsed the plan 2 years ago, and it's a plan that covers the period from 2022 to 2025. So of the 55 initiatives that the plan sets out, in fact 42 of them have been fulfilled, with a number, with the remaining 13 only outstanding because of some of the culturally appropriate timelines that are embedded in those particular actions. And anyone who's had a chance to read through the very detailed progress report will see some of the amazing work that our officers and our reconciliation working group have been doing. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank the working group, our Wurundjeri Woiwurrung elders, Auntie Diane Kerr, Auntie Gail Smith, Uncle Jim Berg, Diana David, Nicole Findlay took her place when there was a changeover, Karen Ingram, Joan Beckwith, and of course staff who work with us, and the very excellent Samantha Buckley, one of our staff members. Also like to thank Uncle Charles Pekana, who was with us on Sunday and has done so much for us, particularly over the past 12 months. I've been to a number of events that he has run for us. One of which was a terrific explanation about the treaty process that's being undertaken in Victoria and the way in which local governments can be involved, and another that was at the Incinerator Gallery as part of NAIDOC Week last year. Some of the other events that have taken place over the last 12 months include Uncle Bill Nicholson facilitating cultural competency, training for sporting clubs to promote welcoming environments, launching the Returning Our Ancestors documentary at Clock Tower as part of Aboriginal Heritage Council Victoria and Western Region Local Government Reconciliation Week, which was a fabulously powerful documentary about, as it says, returning our ancestors' remains, and I would encourage anyone who's got an opportunity to see that documentary. We also hosted very proudly the Magali Awards last year because we were a recipient the previous year for our Reconciliation Action Plan and the quality of it, which is a great credit to our staff. We were the hosts of the awards at the Jering Flemington Hub last year, and were able to see a number of the work that's going on across local governments in Victoria. It was a wonderful celebration of all of the staff working so hard on it in a number of different ways. Some of the things that we're working on into the future are we've progressed the establishment of an Aboriginal Advisory Committee, the Murra Wirigiri Community Messengers, and they will meet regularly to advise council, provide guidance and a cultural lens on the work that we do. And we're also engaging an Aboriginal-led business to facilitate a cultural safety audit of the organisation. So I look forward to seeing what they bring. And just in my final minute, Mayor, I'll just refer to the additional point in the motion, which is that as part of our work through this report, we have, and it's on page 11 of the progress report, we have made a submission to the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung Corporation requesting names for some of our open spaces and parks. And this is the sort of the first step. We need to have some names that are suggested and provided to us by the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung Cultural Heritage Aboriginal Corporation, and then if we then chose to proceed with any renaming or dual naming, any dual naming process of our parks and open spaces, we need to have those names to then proceed to community consultation. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Isa. Councillor Theocrides, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Ava. I just wanted to firstly echo what Councillor Isa had said about the progress and that made so far. As a new councillor coming on board and someone who is deeply invested in ensuring that no one in the municipality is left behind, it was really pleasing to read the report and the progress made so far. It was fantastic achievement by all to have achieved 42 out of 55 of the, I suppose, goals or outcomes. But I won't sort of go on because I think Councillor Isa mentioned what we've done so far in great detail, but I'd like to just pick up some points on in the report of a snapshot of what's to come that I was particularly interested in following the progress of, and that's the Council will support training, education and employment pathways for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in collaboration with Victorian Aboriginal Association Inc.'s Warunka program. I think that it's in making sure that no one's left behind. Training, education and employment is a significant part of people's lives. And so I was really pleased to see that. But also it was really great to see the point about not just the cultural safety audit within the council itself, but also the commitment to looking at bringing cultural awareness to induction and training throughout the whole council. I think that with education and understanding of diversity and diverse people and in particular in this circumstance First Nations peoples, that's how we create understanding and that's how we create acceptance and inclusion. So I was really pleased to see those as snapshots of what's to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Theocharides. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Sypek.
Thank you, Mayor. When I read this report, I was really intrigued about the heritage side of things, because as you know, I know a little bit of history about Moonee Valley, and I'm looking forward to reading to the significance and the actual connection of these parks, of what they have with our First Nations people. But I also probably would like to also recommend, I'm sure the officers will come up with it, but the Essendon Historical Society would be a good source of information in regards to looking at this as well too. But I think if Queen's Park gets a different name, I think you might be in a bit of a pickle, Mayor, because your ward's called Queen's Park Ward, so you might have to change it to something else, and we might have to write to the VEC and get that name changed as well. So look, I look forward to the report coming back. I look forward to seeing the cultural connections to these parks, if they have a cultural connection. Great, I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Phil Byrne.
Thank you, Mayor. Only briefly, just to reflect on Sunday in particular, Uncle Bill Nicholson's discussion around the work that was being done to preserve language, and I think that just to the obviously the great work of the report back, but I guess more specifically to the additional paragraph, I think it's a small part that that council can play to support that broader piece of work. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Samantha Byrne.
Thank you, I will. And I really appreciated reading this report. It's especially the timing of the report, considering the healing ceremony on the weekend. It's good to see how far everyone's come over the years since 2010, or since the statement was signed. But I will touch on point B, and I'm just mindful of asking for the extra names. Sorry, I'm just trying to get to my notes. I'll just read a very quick paragraph from the page 11 that was alluded to before. A submission was made to Wurundjeri Wurrung Cultural Heritage Aboriginal Corporation requesting Wurrung names for several parks identified and open spaces within Moonee Valley, including Spring Gully Grassland, Strathnava Reserve, Woodlands Ponds within Woodlands Park, Rosehill Easement, Afton Street Conservation Reserve, currently undergoing ACHLMA, 5 Mile Creek Reserve, Napier Park, Lily Street Reserve, Grasslands at the Crossway, South Reserve and Arcade Way Reserve. So we've already made that submission, and those particular places were obviously chosen for a particular reason. And there's already quite a lot on the table in terms of names we're asking for that haven't yet gone through the process up here about name changes. And I don't see the need yet to be adding in these extra places. I'm very mindful of going in too hard, too strong with name changes. And I haven't heard any community feedback directly to me asking for this. I haven't, particularly Queen's Park. I know that you might have made light of a joke, Councillor Sypek, and I'm not, I don't mean to be questioning that, but I actually think that that's going to be a really sensitive one. And I don't know whether the community will want to change the name of Queen's Park, and perhaps if we went through with what the officers have recommended, the initial ones first, it might be a better way to go about it, and maybe the feedback will come back and everyone really wants to change lots of names. I'm not sure, but I'm not particularly in support of question B, and I've thought about moving an amendment, but I think that I won't. But I will ask if the vote can be split, Mayor.
I'll consider that.
And B.
Thanks, Councillor Samantha Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Cosgrove?
Thanks, Mayor. I would like to speak in support of Part B of the ceremony. Like Uncle Bill told us a lot, but one of it was about there's no, along the Yarra River, the Birrarung, there's no existing language speakers. So the language was erased, and they're working really hard to try and restore that and get to a point where people can speak it again. And officers have advised that it isn't a matter necessarily of, so as council we can rename or assign a dual name feature to a place, which I think we see a lot of now. We see Melbourne Naarm written on lots of things. If you go over to New Zealand, Aotearoa, we all accept the dual name there, and that's been a really important part of them keeping that part of their culture, the language alive, the Maori language. You see the same thing over in Ireland with the Gaelic language. I don't think it needs to be controversial. I think it could be a really inclusive action that we take to, perhaps have dual names for these places. And we're not, when we make this request to the Cultural Heritage Corporation, I don't think we're not asking for a particular timeline. They don't have to, we're not doubling their workload. They can work through it as they see fit. And as they're trying to recover their language and keep it alive, it may be that there will be parts of Moonee Valley that the history of the cultural history is more well remembered. And so it might be easier for them to name some of the, some large parts than some of the parks we've asked for them to name, where they might have to dig a little deeper or go through storylines a bit further back. So I don't think it's unreasonable to put it to them now, give them as much time as they need. They'll come back to us within a culturally appropriate timeline that's in the amendment, but that it's a sort of a positive action that council can be taking to, towards our reconciliation plan. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Cosgrove. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Barnes?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll try and put this in a layman's terms. My grandfather was an old man when he passed away, and he taught me if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I like the way it is, and I like the way it's called Queen's Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Would anybody else like to speak to the item? Councillor Jones?
I feel like I should, given that everyone else has. Thank you, Mayor. I am happy to support Part B being added to the motion. The main reason for that is I don't like doubling the workload of council officers, and given we've already made a request for some names, if we're going to make a request for potentially more names, I'd rather it was done now as part of the one process so we can try and streamline things. Having said that, I am mindful that I am not sure that the community will be particularly receptive to Queen's Park being name changed, having a name change in particular, given the history of Queen's Park and its relation to being developed for the Queen's Jubilee. But like I said, at this stage, I'm happy to support the amendment to add Part B and make that request so we can actually put it out for community consultation when those names come back.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Councillor Isa, would you like a right of reply?
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate the different views that have been expressed around the table. Also appreciate the comments just made by Councillor Jones that this is something that arose over the weekend, as Councillor Cosgrove has outlined, that language and the retention of language and the ways in which we can continue language through our open spaces is part of our reconciliation action plan. We're embarking on that process for a number of parks, and it's showing, I think, a deep commitment and respect, and not just hearing the words on Sunday, but actually listening to them and enacting them in taking this step tonight to just ask for, all this motion is doing is asking for some Indigenous names for some other spaces within the municipality. It's not starting any processes, it's not preempting community views, it's not even starting the long discussion that might need to be had around how we incorporate names. It's asking the First Nations people who spoke to us so generously on the Sunday and shared with us their pain and their loss of language, and it's taking a meaningful step in response to that to ask for their, to extend their generosity to providing us with some names that we might in the future talk with our community at length and find ways of incorporating those names into our shared future.
Thanks, Councillor Isa. I've taken into consideration the request to separate the motion. I will put the motion to the vote in two parts. So we'll move part A of the recommendation first. Councillors, we clear what we're voting on the first part of the motion? So I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Part B of the motion is up on the screen. Is everyone clear what we're going to be voting on? Yep, so I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's Councillor Phil Byrne, Councillor Cosgrove, Councillor Isa, Councillor Jones, Councillor Theocrides, Councillor Adams. Those against? Councillor Barnes, Councillor Samantha Byrne, Councillor Sypek, and I declare that motion carried. The next report is item 9.2, Community Facilities Management Policy Update. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
Wait for the officer's recommendation to be shown on the screen, if that's okay.
Oh, sorry.
Is it is now? Yes, thank you. Sorry, it's a bit far away for me to see. Thank you. Yes, I move the officer's recommendation. Thanks.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cosgrove. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, and I apologise. I thought I was looking at the old motion. But it is the right one. I do apologise. This motion is to remove an amendment to a policy that was inserted at a council meeting almost 2 years ago. It's on the 27th of April 2023. And the amendment gave soccer clubs priority access to pavilions in several locations during the summer period. As noted in the officer's report, the amendment went against the scope of the policy because the seasonal allocation of pavilions is not actually governed by this particular policy. But notably, the inclusion of this amendment was a central subject of IBAC's special report into Moonee Valley Council. And shortly after the council meeting, IBAC commenced Operation Leo, an investigation into allegations of a scheme to bribe certain Moonee Valley councillors in exchange for voting to give preferential access to the Cross Keys Pavilion to the Essendon Royals Soccer Club. I only learnt of the alleged bribery and corruption when IBAC released its report during the October election. And the meeting of the 27th of April at which this amendment was passed was an incredibly distressing meeting, particularly for community members watching councillors vote for the amendment that we are now removing. It is extremely difficult to re-watch the meeting now, knowing that there had been talk of payments to councillors of up to $50,000 for voting in favour of giving priority to soccer clubs for pavilion access, and that councillors had attended a private dinner and engaged in conversations and lobbying. I know how distressed cricket clubs were when the amendment was passed, and how gutted they were when they found out in October that their efforts to keep access to pavilions for their teams playing sport on ovals in summer were undermined by allegedly corrupt lobbying and pressure on councillors. I'm relieved to be removing the amendment that should never have been there. For some reason, it seems as though it's frowned upon to talk about the IBAC investigation. The truth behind this agenda item tonight is uncomfortable, but we can't pretend that the lobbying, the alleged bribery, the private dinner didn't happen. We have to tell the truth about how this amendment was passed to be sure that it never happens again. There are some real lessons that emerge. The first is that councillors have considerable collective power and that this is vulnerable to people seeking advantages. We need to be able to recognise when this is occurring and when decision-making is potentially compromised. The second is that council's decision-making processes support informed decisions. And what happened on the 27th of April was that councillors explicitly went around council offices and processes, putting up the amendment to circumvent the potential opposition from council staff. It was deliberately designed to bypass opposition and scrutiny from council officers. And I know there's some anxiety about the potential for this to happen again, that councillors can still move amendments to any motion that bypass information gathering and restrictions on spending. When the amendment was put forward, there were questions, there was confusion as to its impact and whether it could even be implemented. And we are improving our processes to require amendments to be circulated earlier and for advice and clarity to be provided. Thirdly, the amendment was designed to ensure pavilion access for clubs for 12 months of the year, including access to the bar and ability to host functions. This was in response to a desire from soccer clubs to access pavilions during the summer season. And council does recognise that soccer clubs need facilities in the off-season to store large items, display honour boards, access facilities for club events and meetings, and these requirements have and can be managed operationally through agreements with council and between clubs, and council will continue to work with clubs to solve these issues. The final lesson I take from this is that when something feels wrong, speak up, ask questions. I did speak up as much as I could at the time, but I'll always wish that I'd asked more questions to uncover at the time what was really going on.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Councillor Cosgrove, would you like to speak to the item?
Thanks, Mayor. Just to echo what Councillor Isa said originally, that we're removing an amendment that was made that was beyond the scope of this policy, that there is a separate policy for seasonal sport allocation. So to my view, we're just making this right, and as it should be, correcting an amendment that shouldn't have been there. But also to note that in response to the IBAC report, it wasn't just this policy that was reviewed, it was also the seasonal sports allocation policy, the sport infrastructure policy, and the Moonee Valley soccer strategy that were reviewed by officers. And it was only this policy and this amendment that was found to be an anomaly, and that they felt should be removed. So yeah, to thank you officers for doing those reviews as well, and yeah, that's all.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. The next report is item 9.3, extension of contract number 203145 for asphalt maintenance services. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Cosgrove?
I'd like to move the officer's recommendation. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Jones? Councillor Cosgrove, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just to highlight some of what's in the report, I suppose, that so footpaths and road management are, one of a major service that council provide, obviously, and that we have approximately 885 kilometres of footpaths or pathways and 460 kilometres of roads that we take care of, and this extending this contract is just to ensure that maintenance on those can continue. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Cosgrove. Councillor Jones, would you like to speak to the item? Anybody else like to speak to the item? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. The next report is 9.4, adoption of councillor internal resolution procedure. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is it on? It's not on the screen yet. Governance. Oh, okay. Yeah. So the officer's recommendation is in the pack. Does who would like to move a motion? Councillor Theocrides.
Thank you, Mayor Ava. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with amendments, please.
Yep. Do you want to read those out, please, Councillor Theocrides?
Sure. So, proposed motion that Council resolves to adopt the Councillor Internal Resolution Procedure Attachment 1 with the following changes. At 2.1, initiating conciliation, to add an additional point E, outline any requests for adjustments or accommodations. B, at 2.4, roles and responsibilities, amend to read as follows. The Mayor's role is to guide the parties to dispute about the standards of conduct in the Model Councillor Code of Conduct and actively explore whether the dispute can be resolved by agreement between them. The Mayor may seek any additional training or support necessary to carry out this role. The role of the complainant and respondent is to explain their respective positions and, in a show of goodwill, actively explore the possibility of resolving the dispute by agreement. All councillors are responsible for always conducting themselves in a courteous and respectful manner during the conciliation. The process should incorporate reasonable adjustments to accommodate the needs of all parties. The role of the Councillor Conduct Officer is to provide the Mayor with administrative support necessary to arrange and conduct the conciliation. C, at 2.5, support from Council to add an additional paragraph. Council, through the Councillor Conduct Officer, may provide support with requests for reasonable adjustments and accommodations if required. D, at the responsibilities table, update the Councillor Conduct Officer's responsibilities to include ensure the Mayor and or councillors receive support for reasonable adjustments and accommodations if they require. E, at related legislation and reference sources that include Equal Opportunity Act 2010, Disability Discrimination Act 1992, and F, bring forward the next review to February 2026.
Thank you, Councillor Theocrides. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Isa. Councillor Theocharides, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor Ava. As there are inclusions that I've sought are really to do with reasonable and reasonable adjustments and accommodations, just to ensure that not just councillors in this term, but if it's kept in once it's reviewed again, to ensure that everyone has the support that they need to engage fairly and equitably in the process, in case of any sort of reasonable adjustments are needed, and that the policy as it stands seeks council to provide only administrative support, but I wanted to include that council could provide assistance and support with the reasonable adjustments if they were required. And then obviously just the inclusion of the Equal Opportunity Act and the Disability Discrimination Act for with those reasonable adjustments are referenced in. And the only other additional item was just with regards to if the Mayor needed some training in conciliation process, that there was an inclusion in the policy that may be sought if they needed. And I just thought that it was great the way that it read, but just needed these couple of tweaks just to cover off a few those extra points.
Thank you, Councillor Theocharides. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the item? No? Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? Councillor Sypek?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I was more than happy to support the officer's recommendation, but these amendments only have come to me late this afternoon, and I have struggled to actually get proper information. I've struggled to get to actually think this through, because a couple of hours does not give me time. The reason why we changed our meeting procedures was to have 2 briefing sessions where we can get all this out the way and not just bring this up at the last minute and ambush everyone. So I feel very uncomfortable. I'm more than happy, and I'm asking if we can split the vote, so I'm more than happy
Mayor,
to.
I'd like to move a point of order, please.
Councillor Isa, what's your point of order?
I'd like the word ambush be asked to be withdrawn under Governance Rule 55.1. This sheet is so hard to make sense of, isn't it? I'm just going to have to go to my rules. I'm sorry, Mayor. It's under 55.5, offensive language. I find it offensive, the suggestion that there was any attempt to ambush. This was circulated, the majority of this was circulated by midday yesterday, and it was circulated again by midday today. There was opportunity for questions to be put, and I did send a message to Councillor Sypek today asking if he had any queries about any of these motions and invited any queries. So I'd just object to the use of the word ambush.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. After consideration, I decide that your point of order is upheld. Councillor Sypek, can you please withdraw your remark?
Withdraw me.
Thank you, Councillor Sypek. You can continue to speak.
Well, like I said, Mayor, this might have been circulated, let me rephrase that. This was circulated yesterday, but there were further amendments to this afternoon, and I don't have sufficient enough time to digest this, and I'm asking if we could split the vote, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Sypek. I will not be splitting the vote. The substantial amendments actually were distributed earlier today, so I will be moving the motion as it is. Would any other council like to speak to the item? Councillor Samantha Byrne?
Mayor, can we please have a 5-minute adjournment?
Sure. We'll take a 5-minute adjournment and we'll be back at 7:27 p.m. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. We've just had an adjournment and we are resuming the meeting at 7:31 p.m. We are considering report item 9.4, adoption of councillor internal resolution procedure. We've had Councillor Theocharides and Councillor Isa and Councillor Sypek speak. Is there any other councillor that would like to speak to the motion? No? Councillor Theocharides, would you like a right of reply?
Just wanted to add, just for further clarification, that when I initially sent these suggestions, it was Monday evening, and since then, perhaps maybe one or two words have changed since Monday evening. But really, the additional points that I've included is with regards to any adjustments or any accommodations that councillors or the mayor requires. According to the Equal Opportunity Act and the Disability Discrimination Act, in a workplace, we need to be able to make reasonable adjustments and accommodations for people who have got a disability or have a need for that. So my inclusion of those points was really to align with the Equal Opportunity Act being a state legislation and the Disability Discrimination Act being the federal legislation instrument. And that it pretty much covers all of the amendments that I've made, and the only other amendment was the inclusion of the sentence, the Mayor should seek any additional training or support necessary to carry out this role, and the role being the role of a conciliator. And that was really just, again, to support the Mayor, whoever that might be at the time, that if they didn't feel that they had the adequate training or support to carry out a conciliator role, that they could seek that support and training if they wanted to. So really, they are the only amendments that I've passed, just in those two themes. So I thought I'd just provide that additional information and where they come from.
Thank you, Councillor Theocharides. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's Councillor Phil Byrne, Councillor Samantha Byrne, Councillor Cosgriff, Councillor Isa, Councillor Jones, Councillor Theocharides, Councillor Adams. Those against? Councillor John Barnes.
I will abstain.
Okay. So I note that Councillor Sypek is abstaining from the vote. In accordance with section 61(5)(e) of the Local Government Act 2020, a councillor present at the meeting who does not vote is to be taken to have voted against the question. Now, I declare the motion carried. The next report is item 9.5, Audit and Risk Committee, minutes of 9th of December 2024 meeting, biannual report and performance assessment. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillors, Councillor Jones?
I'm happy to move the officer's report.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Cosgriff? Councillor Jones, would you like to speak to the motion?
I'm actually want to point out that what's on the screen doesn't match the motion for the Audit and Risk Committee.
Oh, yes, it's been scrolled. Sorry, it was up there. Thank you, Governance.
Either way, I'm happy to move the report as a council or member of the Audit and Risk Committee and in attendance at that meeting. I'm happy to move that what was in there is
Thank you,
accurate.
Councillor Jones. Oh, there we go. Yep. Councillor Cosgriff, would you like to speak to the motion?
Just to say, as a councillor member of the Audit and Risk Committee with Councillor Jones, that it's a committee, you know, it's part of good governance that we have an audit and risk committee that assesses the organisation's risks, and that the committee meets 4 times a year at least, and then they present a report biannually, so twice a year, to council, and this is just tabling that report, and to thank the committee members and officers whose work has gone into making it, because it's a substantial amount of work and oversight and number crunching and other things. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Cosgrove. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? No. Just so everyone knows, the officer's recommendation is on the screen. Is everyone clear on what we're voting on? Excellent. I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. The next report is item 9.6, endorsement of community consultation to name laneway rear of 290 to 292 Racecourse Road, Flemington. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Isa.
Thanks, Mayor. I'd like to move the officer's recommendation with an amended point B that reads, endorse the following proposed names for community engagement, as well as inviting suggestions from the public that are consistent with the naming rules and guidelines for places in Victoria. And then as continues.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Phil Byrne. Councillor Isa, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mayor. So we spoke earlier tonight about naming places, and this is an actual commencement of a process to name a place, that being a laneway off to the rear of Racecourse Road that comes off near 1 Wellington Street. The purpose of naming this particular laneway, as often is the case in parts of Moonee Valley where there's medium density infill, is to provide an address for some infill, so to provide an address for a new residential premises that will be completed at some point this year. One of the frustrations I think we've had as councillors is the process of consultation has sometimes not enabled a great deal of scope for recommendations or suggestions from the community. And so I really wanted to move or kickstart this process, because there is some timeliness to this process. The residence is being built, and unfortunately we're coming at this a little bit late, and we need to have something in place as quickly as possible. But it's not so urgent that we need to compromise on the principle of community consultation and engagement. And so I did want to make sure that we emphasise in the communication that goes out to the community, to emphasise that suggestions are welcome. And I've seen the form that will be going out to residents, and I do wonder whether it might be advisable to take a look at the format of that form in light of this, if this resolution is passed, to perhaps officers may consider putting the 2 names and then a category of other, so that it is clear that there's scope for recommendations. Of course, people can't just recommend anything. It does have to be consistent with the naming rules and guidelines. And at the moment, some of those guidelines are around targeting an increase in names that reflect women and females and a diversity of gender within Victoria. It's been a bit weighted against diversity of gender. So that's the intention of the inclusion. And a resident rang me over the weekend, someone with a great depth of historical knowledge in Flemington. And of course, you know, the history of Flemington is just so fascinating from 40,000 years ago to now. It's just got such a deep history. And a resident who's across much of that history rang me to ask why Lydia Kozlorich's name wasn't being considered. Lydia Kozlorich being the councillor who was the councillor before I came to council in 2007, and she sadly passed away from breast cancer in 2006 and is still loved within Flemington. And so I did say to the resident, look, suggestions are very welcome in this process, and we do want community to engage in the statutory process and welcome all community members to put forward the names of people who they think might meet the naming rules and guidelines. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Isa. Councillor Phil Byrne, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to also flag that we covered a bit of ground on naming in our sort of earlier agenda item today. But just to note that a place name is there for some time, and I think the engagement of the community is critical in that context. And I think that this change essentially elevates the importance of engagement with the community, puts the framework of the naming rules and guidelines in place. And I think, if anything, that'll strengthen council's position in being able to deal with submissions that are put to it on names. I think it's probably also a good addition for the future naming of places. And yeah, without such a change, to me, it just sort of seems that we're not as genuine in what we could be with our engagement. So I think it's an enhancement of the community's ability to to genuinely engage. Thanks, Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Phil Byrne. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? No, if not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. The next report is item 9.7, Governance Report, Q4 2024. Councillors, the officer's recommendation is shown on the screen. Do I have a motion? Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Theocharides. Councillor Jones, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Theocharides, would you like to speak?
No, thank you.
Would any councillor like to speak to the motion? Councillor Isa?
Yeah, I think someone should explain what the motion is. So,
Governance report.
yeah, I'm just going to the motion because I can't read it afar. I'm so sorry. The
Would you like me to jump to Councillor Byrne and then swing back to you, or are you ready?
I'm happy. No, it's fine.
okay.
I just had to get the motion because
Yeah, sure.
unfortunately I can't read the
Screen, okay.
screen. I'm really sorry. So,
All good.
this is obviously a quarterly report that we receive that goes through the informal meetings of council to note what was discussed at council at those meetings and to note any conflict of interests that have been recorded for those meetings. It's an important record of accountability and transparency. It also provides a really helpful record of the motions, the notices of motions that are still open. The Part B, a little while ago, there was for some reason, there was I can't even remember what the reason was. There was a need for, or there was a desire to report on the correspondence arising from notices of motion. And I did just want to point out that we don't obviously have as much correspondence arising from notices of motion now because we don't have many notices of motion, but that correspondence is it is located on our website. So under the governance section of our website, there is correspondence that's, my understanding is that it's separate from this quarterly reporting process. So there still will be that transparency over that correspondence, but we just don't need to include it in this particular quarterly report. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Isa. Councillor Samantha Byrne, would you like to speak to the item? You don't have to.
Well, I sort of like glad Councillor Isa did speak to it, because I think that it probably is just a little bit of a change, and I think when there is a change to what we do, we probably should take the time just to explain it. I don't see it as a particularly controversial change, as Councillor Isa highlighted. It's not like the community can't see open notices of motion. It just won't be coming through, and because we haven't had many, it's probably not as necessary for people who are interested. The notice of motions that have come before that are still on there, just very broadly: Queen's Park Outdoor Pool, Heritage, private-public partnerships, Airport West Childcare Centres, Avondale Heights Community Garden matter. They were things that used to come through as notices of motion, but with the assistance of the CEO and the monitors and staff, we hopefully have got a bit of a better process of being able to get resolutions without having to do notices of motion, hence not having any and not needing the update like this anymore. So yes, that's probably the significant difference to this governance report compared to previous governance reports that we've had. Thanks.
Councillor Isa?
Sorry, can I just ask a question of clarification, because I feel
Sure.
like I might have been talking about something different to what I think I heard Councillor Byrne saying. My understanding is that we're revoking the reporting to council on the correspondence. Does it also include and the status of notices of motion? I think I've just answered my own question. I was focusing on the correspondence.
That's okay. All good. Thanks, Councillor Isa. Councillor Byrne, have you finished speaking to the item?
I hope I haven't really ruffled everything, but that was my understanding of the report. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes,
Yep.
thanks. Thanks. I will just leave it at that. So,
Councillor Isa, did you want another point of clarification?
Could I ask if the motion could be split, please?
Yes, I'll consider that. Sorry. Okay. Councillor Isa, can I just clarify your request to split the motion? Was it that you wanted to split A1 and 2 as one motion and then B as the second motion?
Yes, I was under
what
the
you
impression that we were just revoking the correspondence, which I was confident was already on the website, so it didn't matter that we weren't bringing it to council. And because I've been focused on some other items, I overlooked the fact that we're revoking and bringing the status of open notices of motion to council, which actually I think is quite important, and I think we should be continuing. So it's my oversight that I've misread that, and I don't wish to support that part of the motion.
Councillor Isa, I've received advice from the CEO that if you wish that to be deleted, it's probably best to move an amendment.
I'm not wishing to delete it because I haven't flagged any amendments to do so. I'm just asking to split the motion because I don't wish to vote against that part of the motion. It's my own fault. It's my own oversight. I was focused on other items tonight.
Yes, I appreciate that, that it hasn't been flagged as amendment, but I will allow it at this time because the CEO has... yeah, sorry.
Do you want me to? Could I move for an adjournment, please?
Sure, yes. Can we please... well, we'll just adjourn the meeting at 7:50 and be back at 8 o'clock. Thank you, everyone, and welcome back to our council meeting. We are at 7:59 p.m. We are considering report item number 9.7, Governance Report Quarter 4 2024. And Councillor Isa, you had the call. Would you like to continue to speak?
I was just going to ask a point of clarification, if I may, Mayor, through you, Mayor. If we revoke the requirement for the status of open notices, of all open notice of motions to be part of quarterly reports, is it possible for officers to make available on our website the information that would otherwise be included in those quarterly reports to make sure that we're not diminishing transparency in any way?
Thanks, Councillor Isa. I'll refer that to the CEO.
Thank you, Councillor Isa. Susan Mayer, yes, certainly we can arrange for the website information update and include the stages of all notice motions, open notice motions. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Isa. Would any other councillor like to speak to the motion? If not, Councillor Jones, would you like a right of reply?
Thank you, Mayor. I moved this motion. I felt that it was a relatively uncontroversial motion, obviously reporting on all the meetings that we've been able to attend and how we attended them, and also the revoking of the requirement for a report to council meetings does not revoke the fact that these notices of motions that are still outstanding actually have to be delivered upon. I thank both Councillor Isa and Councillor Samantha Byrne for providing extra clarification for anyone in the community that may want that. But yes, I'm happy to support the motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Now, there was a request to separate the motion. So I won't allow that. We will be moving the officer's recommendation on the screen. So I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Councillors, item 10 on the agenda is notices of motion, and we have none listed on tonight's agenda, so we'll move on to item 11, urgent business. Councillors, do we have any urgent business? If not, we will move on to item 12, confidential reports. We have one confidential report listed on the agenda this evening. The motion to close the meeting to the public pursuant to section 66 in brackets 2 of the Local Government Act 2020 to consider the confidential item 12.1, appointment of an independent chair to the CEO Employment and Remuneration Committee, is displayed on the screen. Can I please have a mover and a seconder? Can I have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Theocharides, and seconded by Councillor Cosgriff. Councillor Theocharides, would you like to speak to the motion? Councillor Cosgriff. Would any other councillor like to speak to the item? No, if not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. This is where we say good night to those watching the meeting via live stream and to those in the chamber. Thank you for attending the first meeting of Council for the new year. The next Council meeting will be held on Tuesday, the 25th of February 2025. Good night.